I'm Samantha Mitchell, 27, and I've spent 5 years building my marketing career in Chicago, far from my Wisconsin hometown and my increasingly distant parents. So when Mom called last week with unusual warmth in her voice saying, "Come early this weekend, Sam. We want to celebrate you," I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe the years of feeling like the family disappointment were finally ending. I packed my car with carefully chosen gifts and drove 3 hours with butterflies in my stomach. But as I pulled into their familiar driveway, something felt terribly wrong. The extra cars, the laughter spilling through windows, the banner visible through the curtains, none of it made sense. Before I dive into what happened when I stepped through that front door, let me know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe if you've ever felt like the forgotten family member. Trust me, what happened next changed everything about my family forever. Growing up in Lakeside, Wisconsin, population 3,782, I was always a bit different from the rest of the Mitchell family. Our small ranch-style home on Maple Street housed what looked like the perfect American family from the outside. My father Thomas, a respected high school history teacher with a gentle demeanor and conflict-avoidant personality, my mother Rebecca, the elementary school secretary who ran our household with military precision and kept immaculate photo albums of our childhood while maintaining emotional distance, my younger sister Haley, 3 years my junior and the undisputed golden child, and me, somehow always slightly out of step with everyone else. My childhood memories are a patchwork of trying desperately to win my mother's approval. While she hung Haley's kindergarten finger paintings in ornate frames, my advanced placement artwork was magneted to the refrigerator until something more important needed the space. Dad would smile sympathetically but never intervene. "That's just how your mother is," he'd say, patting my shoulder. "Don't take it personally." But how could I not? I remember my 12th birthday when Mom forgot to order the cake she'd promised. "It's fine, we'll just have ice cream," Dad suggested, while Haley got the elaborate 3-tier Harry Potter-themed masterpiece for her birthday just 2 months later. When I pointed out the discrepancy, Mom said, "Haley's still little, Sam. You're old enough to understand that sometimes things don't work out perfectly." That became the theme of our relationship. I was always old enough to understand why Haley's dance recitals took precedence over my debate tournaments, why her C+ in math warranted celebratory ice cream while my straight A's were met with "that's what we expect from you," why her teenage rebellions were just a phase while mine were disappointing choices. By the time I reached high school, I'd developed a defensive independence that both irritated and relieved my parents. I threw myself into academics and extracurriculars, staying late at school whenever possible. I won a statewide essay contest my junior year. Mom and Dad couldn't attend the ceremony because it conflicted with Haley's choir concert. I stopped telling them about my achievements after that. College applications were a battlefield. I wanted to go to Northwestern or University of Chicago. My parents pushed for the state university where tuition would be cheaper and I could live at home. "Why waste money when you'll probably just get married in a few years anyway?" Mom had asked, not even trying to hide her priorities. I ended up at University of Wisconsin-Madison on scholarship, close enough to visit occasionally but far enough to breathe. Those 4 years transformed me. I discovered marketing and communications, developed close friendships with people who actually valued my opinions, and gradually reduced my trips home from every weekend to major holidays only. Each visit brought the same questions: when would I move back? Wasn't Chicago too dangerous? Was I dating anyone serious yet? Meanwhile, Haley changed majors 3 times at the community college 20 minutes from our parents' house, and Mom and Dad covered her rent and car payments without complaint. 5 years ago, after graduating with honors, I accepted a position at a digital marketing agency in Chicago. Mom cried, not from pride, but from what she called worry. Dad shook his head and mumbled something about big cities corrupting good values. Haley rolled her eyes and asked if she could have my bedroom furniture since I obviously wasn't coming back. I moved anyway. Started at entry level and worked my way up through pure determination and 80-hour weeks. My apartment evolved from a studio with milk crates for furniture to a respectable 1-bedroom in Wicker Park with actual matching dishes and art on the walls. I made friends who became chosen family. I dated, had my heart broken, learned to pick myself up again. Communication with my parents dwindled to obligatory Sunday phone calls that grew shorter each week. Mom would list local girls who'd gotten engaged or had babies. Dad would grumble about property taxes or the neighbor's unkempt lawn. Neither asked much about my life, and when I tried sharing work accomplishments, Mom would inevitably interrupt with, "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Haley's thinking about taking real estate classes?" Last month, I finally secured the promotion I'd been working toward for 2 years, senior communications strategist. I called my parents with the news, rehearsing my explanation of why this was a big deal in my industry. Mom answered, listened for exactly 45 seconds, then said, "That's nice. Listen, Haley's boyfriend Jason just proposed. We're all so excited. She's finally going to settle down. Isn't that wonderful?" I'd congratulated her automatically, swallowing the familiar disappointment. We hadn't spoken since, until last week when Mom called on Tuesday evening as I was preparing a presentation. "Sammy," she'd said, using my childhood nickname that she knew I hated, "we were thinking you should come home this weekend. Come early, around 4 on Saturday. We want to celebrate you." I nearly dropped my phone in shock. Celebrate me? Why? Do we need a reason to celebrate our daughter? Mom had laughed, sounding genuinely warm. "It's been too long since you've been home. We miss you." The unfamiliar maternal affection in her voice had stirred something in me, that desperate, never quite extinguished hope that someday they might see me, really see me. I agreed immediately, rescheduled a brunch with friends, and spent an embarrassing amount at a boutique buying gifts for everyone: artisanal whiskey for Dad, a cashmere scarf for Mom, and a gift card to Sephora for Haley. The 3-hour drive from Chicago to Lakeside yesterday gave me too much time to think. I cycled between excited anticipation and anxious dread. Maybe they'd finally recognized my achievements. Maybe Mom had done some soul-searching. Maybe the distance had made their hearts grow fonder. I called when I was an hour away, but no one answered. I texted Mom, "On my way. See you around 4. No response. A tendril of unease curled in my stomach, but I pushed it away. They were probably busy preparing whatever celebration they had planned. As I drove through my hometown, memories flickered by like scenes from someone else's life. The high school where Dad still taught. The park where I'd had my first kiss. The diner where I'd waited tables summers during college while Haley lounged by our parents' pool with her friends. I turned onto Maple Street at 3:58 p.m., my knuckles white against the steering wheel. Something wasn't right. Too many cars lined the street, cars I didn't recognize. Our modest driveway was full. Lights blazed from every window despite the bright spring afternoon. And through the front window, I could see a corner of what looked like a banner. My stomach dropped as I parked across the street. What exactly was I walking into? I sat in my car for several minutes, studying the scene before me. In addition to my parents' familiar blue sedan and Haley's red compact, there were at least 6 other vehicles parked along the street. I recognized my Uncle Steve's pickup truck and Aunt Caroline's minivan, but the others were unfamiliar. From inside the house came the muffled sounds of laughter and conversation, far more voices than just my immediate family. "What the hell?" I muttered, checking my phone again. No missed calls. No text responses. Just the message from Mom 5 days ago, "Come early, we'll celebrate you." I gathered my gifts, smoothed my carefully chosen outfit, and approached the front door with mounting anxiety. Through the window, I could now make out part of a banner hanging in the living room. The visible portion read, "Gratulations." In large purple letters, Haley's favorite color, not mine. I knocked, then rang the doorbell when no one answered. After an uncomfortably long wait, the door swung open to reveal my father, whose expression cycled rapidly from expectation to shock to something that looked disturbingly like guilt. "Sam," he said, his voice strained. "You're here?" "Yes," I replied slowly. "Mom invited me. For 4 o'clock. Today. Dad's hand went to the back of his neck, his nervous tell since I was a child. Right, right. Of course. Come in. We just didn't expect you so early? I finished for him, confusion mounting. Mom specifically said to come early. He stepped aside without responding, and I entered the house I'd grown up in but now felt like a stranger within. The entryway looked the same, the weathered bench where we'd tied our shoes as children, the wall of family photos that somehow featured Haley 3 times as often as me. But something was different. Balloons clustered on the ceiling. A sweet, bakery smell hung in the air. As I followed Dad into the living room, the conversation suddenly hushed. 12 pairs of eyes turned toward me in various states of surprise. In the sudden silence, I took in the scene, extended family members and people I didn't recognize seated around our living room, a pile of wrapped gifts on the coffee table, and the now fully visible banner stretched across the far wall. Congratulations, Haley and Jason. In the center of it all stood my sister in a blue cocktail dress, her hand entwined with a tall, sandy-haired man I'd never seen before. Her left hand, where a substantial diamond caught the light from the overhead fixture. Sam? My mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Her eyes widened in what could only be described as horror. What are you doing here now? The gift bag suddenly felt heavy in my hands. You told me to come at 4. To celebrate. Understanding dawned on me in a sickening wave. There was no celebration for me. There never had been. This was an engagement party for Haley, and somehow my parents had completely forgotten they'd invited me home the same weekend. Mom's face flushed red. Oh. That's right, we did discuss you coming home soon, didn't we? I meant next weekend. For your birthday. My birthday was over 3 months away. You said this weekend, I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. You said come early, around 4. You said you wanted to celebrate me. The room had gone painfully quiet. I could feel everyone watching this train wreck unfold. Haley took a step forward, her expression a mix of annoyance and pity. Sorry, Sam, but this is kind of my engagement party, she said with a tight smile. We've been planning it for weeks. The tall man beside her, Jason, presumably, shifted uncomfortably. Nice to meet you, he offered with an awkward wave. Haley's told me a lot about you. I doubted that very much. I'm sure what happened, Mom said with a brittle laugh directed at the room, is that I mentioned Sam might visit soon when we were discussing the party plans, and she got confused about the dates. You know how she is, always in her own world. Several relatives nodded sympathetically, as if this explained everything. As if I was the problem. As if I'd somehow hallucinated a phone conversation. I didn't get confused, I said, my voice stronger now as indignation cut through the shock. You called me Tuesday night while I was working on my presentation. You specifically invited me to come early this Saturday to celebrate. Mom's smile remained fixed, but her eyes hardened. Well, you're here now. Come in and have some punch. We're celebrating Haley's engagement to Jason. Isn't it wonderful? They're thinking about a December wedding. Aunt Caroline approached, glass of punch in hand. Sam, dear, how are you? Still doing that internet thing in the city? Digital marketing strategy, I corrected automatically, then immediately hated myself for it. Why was I still trying to validate my career to these people? Right, she patted my arm. No special someone in your life yet? You're not getting any younger, you know. The room had mostly returned to previous conversations, though I noticed several people glancing over periodically, clearly entertained by the awkward family drama. Haley was introducing Jason to our elderly great-aunt Martha, pointedly turned away from me. I stood frozen, still holding my ridiculous gift bags. Mom had disappeared back into the kitchen. Dad hovered nearby, clearly unsure what to do with me. Let me take those, he finally offered, reaching for the bags. This one's for you, I said robotically, handing him the whiskey. And this is for Mom. And Haley. He accepted them with a grimace. Thanks, kiddo. That's thoughtful. I thought I was being celebrated, I said quietly, so only he could hear. Dad's eyes couldn't meet mine. Your mother gets confused sometimes. You know how she is when she's planning events for Haley. Everything else goes out the window. Including me. Especially me. Can I get you some food? Dad asked. Your mom made those little quiche things you used to like. I looked around the room at my extended family, people who barely knew me, who had watched me grow up in Haley's shadow, who had never questioned the family dynamic that consistently pushed me to the margins. I looked at my sister, radiant in her moment of glory, not even bothering to include me in her happiness. I looked at the gifts and the balloons and the specially ordered cake that would undoubtedly be perfect. Every instinct screamed at me to walk out, to drive back to Chicago and never return. But something else, perhaps the little girl still desperate for parental approval, perhaps simple shock, kept me rooted in place. Sure, I heard myself say. I'll have some food. I moved through the next hour in a fog of humiliation and disbelief. Mom had set up a buffet in the dining room, and I filled a plate mechanically, not tasting anything. I found a corner to occupy, watching as relatives and friends, Haley's friends, people I'd never met, circulated through the house, exclaiming over the ring, congratulating the happy couple. No one seemed particularly interested in talking to me beyond brief, awkward greetings. I caught snippets of conversation that made it clear everyone knew this party had been planned for weeks. Everyone except me. Beautiful spread, Rebecca, Aunt Caroline told my mother loudly. You always go all out for Haley's special moments. Mom beamed. Nothing's too good for my baby girl. I focused intently on my plate, stabbing a cherry tomato with unnecessary force. Sam? A gentle voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see my cousin Emily, Aunt Caroline's daughter, who was a few years older than me. Unlike the rest of the family, Emily had always been kind, perhaps because she understood what it was like to be different. She'd escaped to Seattle years ago and rarely came back. Mind if I join you? I gestured to the empty chair beside me, relieved to see a friendly face. This is awkward as hell, huh? Emily said quietly, sitting down. Did they really not tell you about the engagement party? Mom invited me home for a celebration, I explained. She never specified what we were celebrating. I just assumed. That for once it might be about you. Emily finished with a sympathetic grimace. Classic Aunt Rebecca. I brought gifts, I admitted, feeling pathetic. Of course you did, because you're not a garbage person. Emily's directness was refreshing. Look, I know it's not my place, but your parents' dynamic with you and Haley has always been messed up. You know that, right? Before I could respond, Mom appeared with a tray of champagne flutes. Drink, girls? We're about to do toasts. Emily took 2 glasses, handing one to me. Thanks, Aunt Rebecca. I was just telling Sam how nice it is to see her. It's been ages. Mom's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, Sam doesn't make it home very often. Too busy with her career, I suppose. I come when I'm invited, I said, the champagne making me bolder. Or when I think I'm invited. Mom's eyes narrowed, but she moved on without responding, distributing the remaining glasses. Don't let her gaslight you, Emily whispered. This is classic narcissistic parent behavior. I took a large swallow of champagne. I don't want to ruin Haley's party. Honey, you didn't crash a party. They forgot they invited you home the same weekend. That's on them, not you. My father clinked a spoon against his glass, calling for attention. The room quieted as he stood beside Haley and Jason, beaming with pride. Rebecca and I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate Haley and Jason's engagement, he began. As many of you know, we've been hoping our beautiful daughter would find someone special who appreciates her as much as we do. In Jason, she's found a man who's not only successful and kind, but who understands just how precious our Haley is. My mother stepped forward, dabbing at her eyes. Watching Haley grow into the amazing woman she is today has been the greatest joy of our lives. Her determination, her spirit, her heart. Jason, you're getting a truly special person. I felt Emily's hand cover mine as my parents continued, taking turns listing Haley's virtues without a single acknowledgement of my presence. It was as if I didn't exist, hadn't grown up in this same house, hadn't succeeded on my own terms without their emotional or financial support. After the toasts, Mom called for attention again. "We have a special gift for Haley," she announced, retrieving a small box from the mantel. "This has been in the Mitchell family for generations." I watched as she opened the box to reveal our grandmother's pearl necklace, the one Mom had always said would be divided between her daughters someday. The one I'd admired since childhood. "These pearls have been worn by Mitchell brides for 4 generations, Mom explained to the room. "My mother wore them on her wedding day, and I wore them on mine. Now they'll be Haley's." The guests murmured appreciatively as Mom fastened the necklace around Haley's neck. "They're perfect on you, sweetheart." Something sharp and painful lodged in my chest. It wasn't just about the pearls, it was what they represented. Once again, I was an afterthought, if I was a thought at all. "I need some air," I whispered to Emily, setting down my glass and slipping away from the gathering. I found myself climbing the stairs to my old bedroom, seeking refuge in the familiar. But when I opened the door, I discovered the room had been completely transformed. My bed was gone, replaced by a treadmill and weight bench. The walls, once covered with my debate team certificates and art, were now bare except for a large TV mounted opposite the exercise equipment. Boxes labeled Sam Storage were stacked in one corner. I sat on one of the boxes, feeling the last threads of connection to this house, this family, unraveling. Out of curiosity, I opened the top box. Inside were yearbooks, debate trophies, my high school diploma, physical evidence of a life and achievements my parents had packed away, literally and figuratively. At the bottom of the box, I found a framed certificate from the statewide essay contest I'd won junior year, the one my parents had skipped for Haley's choir concert. I'd never actually seen the certificate, since it had been mailed to our home while I was at a summer program. They hadn't even bothered to show it to me when I returned. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I hastily wiped my eyes, embarrassed to be found crying among the remnants of my childhood. "Come in," I called, expecting Emily. Instead, my grandmother appeared, my father's mother, Ruth, who lived in a retirement community an hour away and rarely attended family functions anymore. "Thought I might find you up here," she said, easing herself onto a box across from me. At 87, Grandma Ruth moved slowly but her mind remained sharp. "Bit of a shock, wasn't it?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Rebecca claims it was an honest mistake, mixing up the weekends," Grandma continued. "Thomas is backing her story, of course. He always does." "It's fine," I said automatically. "No, Samantha, it is not fine," Grandma Ruth's voice was firm. "I've watched this dynamic play out your entire life, and I've kept my mouth shut too often because it wasn't my place. But I'm too old now to care about what's proper." I stared at her, surprised by her directness. "Your mother has always favored Haley, and your father has always enabled it," she stated plainly. "It wasn't right when you were children, and it's not right now. You deserved better from them, my dear." Tears welled in my eyes again at this simple validation. "I don't know why I keep hoping things will change." "Because you're human, and they're your parents," Grandma said gently. "But sometimes we need to accept people for who they've shown themselves to be, not who we wish they were." Our conversation was interrupted by a commotion downstairs. Curious, I followed Grandma Ruth back down to find Haley opening gifts in the living room, surrounded by admirers. Mom was meticulously recording each gift in a notebook, just as she'd done at every one of Haley's birthdays, graduations, and achievements. I slipped into the kitchen for some water, my head pounding from emotion and champagne. As I opened the refrigerator, I froze. There, on the bottom shelf, partially hidden behind containers of party food, was a cake. A bakery cake with my name written in blue icing. "Happy birthday, Sam." My birthday was in July. It was now April. I pulled out the cake, staring at it in disbelief. They had remembered. They had planned something for me. And then Haley got engaged, and they decided her celebration was more important. So important that they didn't even bother to tell me about the change of plans. Something snapped inside me. 5 years of carefully maintained distance, 27 years of being the family afterthought, a lifetime of swallowing hurt to keep the peace, it all crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. Cake in hand, I walked back into the living room. The living room fell silent as I entered with the cake. Haley paused mid-unwrapping, a set of crystal wine glasses in her hands. Mom's notebook pen stilled. Dad's face drained of color. "I found something interesting in the refrigerator," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Looks like there was a celebration planned for me after all. Just not important enough to actually happen." Mom stood quickly. "Samantha, this isn't the time." "When is the time, Mom?" I asked, setting the cake on the coffee table beside Haley's pile of gifts. "My entire life, there's never been a right time to acknowledge me. There's never been a right time to celebrate my achievements. There's never been a right time for me to matter as much as Haley." "That's not true," Dad protested weakly. "Isn't it?" I picked up the notebook Mom had been writing in. "You're documenting every single gift Haley receives, just like you did for every birthday, every Christmas, every special occasion of her life. Did you ever once do that for me?" Mom snatched the notebook back. "You're making a scene, Samantha. This is your sister's engagement party." "I know exactly what it is," I replied. "What I don't understand is why you called me on Tuesday and specifically invited me home for a celebration this weekend. Why did you do that if you knew this was happening?" The room was uncomfortably quiet. Relatives and friends were watching with undisguised interest. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Haley's expression had shifted from annoyance to something more complex. "I told you, I got confused about the dates," Mom insisted. "I meant next weekend." "No, you didn't," I said firmly. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You remembered you had promised to celebrate my birthday months ago, but then Haley got engaged, and that became more important. Instead of calling me like an adult to reschedule, you just hoped I wouldn't show up, or that I wouldn't make a fuss when I discovered the truth." Dad stepped forward. "Sam, honey, that's not fair. Your mother would never." "Stop defending her, Dad. Just stop." I turned to face him directly. "Your entire life has been about keeping Mom happy at everyone else's expense, especially mine. Have you ever once stood up for me when she dismissed my achievements? Have you ever once insisted that I deserved the same attention and celebration as Haley?" His silence was answer enough. "You know what the saddest part is?" I continued, addressing the room now. "I'm actually successful. I just got promoted to senior communications strategist at one of Chicago's top digital agencies. I manage campaigns for major national brands. I have a beautiful apartment that I pay for myself. I built a wonderful life with friends who actually value me. And none of that has ever been enough for you too." "Oh, here we go," Haley interjected, rolling her eyes. "Saint Samantha, so perfect and independent. Some of us actually want to be close to our family instead of running away to prove how special we are." "Close to family?" I repeated incredulously. "Haley, you've lived off Mom and Dad your entire adult life. They pay your rent. They bought your car. They financially support you while you figure out what you want to be when you grow up. That's not being close to family, that's being dependent on them." "Girls, please," Mom pleaded, glancing anxiously at the guests. "This isn't appropriate." "No, Mom, what's not appropriate is inviting your daughter home under false pretenses and then acting like she's crazy when she calls you on it. What's not appropriate is spending my entire life making me feel like I matter less than my sister." "That's ridiculous," Mom snapped, her facade of calm finally cracking. "We've always treated you both equally." A laugh escaped me, a sharp, bitter sound. "Equally? You converted my bedroom into a home gym while Haley's childhood bedroom is preserved like a shrine. You've given her the family pearls without even considering that I might want them too. You remember every detail of her life while forgetting my actual birthday by 3 months. That's your idea of equal? You left, Mom shot back. You chose to move away. You chose to distance yourself from this family. Haley stayed. Haley calls. Haley visits. I left because there was no place for me here. My voice rose despite my efforts to control it. I left because no matter what I achieved, it was never good enough. I left because I was suffocating in Haley's shadow, and neither of you could see it or care enough to change it. That's completely unfair, Dad finally found his voice. We've always been proud of you, Sam. Really? Name one time you've said that to me in the last 5 years. Name one accomplishment of mine that you've celebrated even half as much as you're celebrating Haley's engagement. His silence spoke volumes. Haley stood, the pearls gleaming at her throat. You've always been jealous of me, she accused. Always competing, always trying to prove you're better. You couldn't just be happy with who you are and what you have. You had to run off to the big city to show everyone how special you are. I'm not jealous of you, Haley, I said, suddenly tired. I'm sad for you. Because you don't even see how this dynamic has damaged both of us. You've been taught that your worth comes from staying dependent and meeting Mom and Dad's expectations. I've been taught that nothing I do will ever be enough to earn their approval. We're both losing. Oh, spare me the psychoanalysis, Haley scoffed. This is my engagement party, and you're ruining it because you can't stand not being the center of attention for once. For once? I repeated incredulously. When have I ever been the center of attention in this family? When have any of my achievements ever been celebrated the way yours are? Oh my God, it's always about you, isn't it? Haley's voice rose. You think you're so special with your fancy job and your city apartment. Some of us care about family more than career success. This isn't about career versus family, I shot back. This is about basic respect and acknowledgement. This is about parents who play favorites and then gaslight the child who calls them on it. Dad stepped between us. That's enough, both of you. Samantha, I think you should calm down. I am calm, Dad. For the first time in my life, I'm seeing things clearly. I turned to face the room of uncomfortable guests. I apologize to all of you for this scene. This isn't how I wanted today to go. Congratulations, Haley and Jason. I wish you happiness. I grabbed my purse from the entryway bench. I'm going to get a hotel room for the night. I think we all need some space. Samantha, don't be dramatic, Mom called after me. You're overreacting, as usual. I paused at the door, looking back at my family, my mother's tight, angry expression, my father's conflicted, helpless stance, my sister's mixture of triumph and uncertainty. I'm not overreacting, I said quietly. I'm finally reacting. There's a difference. The door closed behind me with a decisive click, and I walked to my car with shaking legs but a strangely calm mind. As I pulled away from the house, I could see curtains twitching in the living room window, relatives watching the family drama unfold. In my rearview mirror, the home where I'd grown up receded, looking smaller than I remembered. I barely remembered the drive to the Lakeside Inn, the only hotel in our small town. My body operated on autopilot while my mind replayed the confrontation in excruciating detail. Had I gone too far? Not far enough? Would this be the final rupture with my family, the point of no return? The desk clerk gave me a curious look as I checked in. In a town this small, everyone knew everyone, and the Mitchell family drama would be common knowledge by morning. I didn't care. I was beyond caring about appearances. My room was basic but clean, floral bedspread, generic landscape paintings, Bible in the nightstand drawer. I sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation was fading, leaving me hollow. I called my friend Megan in Chicago, needing an anchor to my real life. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, how's the mysterious family celebration going?" she asked cheerfully. "It wasn't for me," I said, my voice cracking. "It was Haley's engagement party. They forgot they'd invited me home." "What? Are you serious?" Megan's outrage was comforting in its certainty. "That's beyond messed up, Sam." I gave her the abbreviated version, her supportive comments helping to validate that I wasn't crazy, that what had happened was genuinely wrong. We talked until my phone battery warned it was running low. "Come home early," Megan suggested. "Karen and I will meet you with emergency wine and Thai food." "Thanks," I said gratefully. "I might take you up on that tomorrow. I just need to sleep and process everything first." After hanging up, I took a long shower, letting the hot water wash away the tension in my shoulders. I had just changed into the Lakeside High t-shirt I kept in my car emergency kit when a knock sounded at my door. I approached cautiously, half expecting to find my mother ready to continue the argument. Instead, peering through the peephole revealed my cousin Emily, holding a paper bag. "Peace offering," she called through the door. "And insider information." I opened the door, genuinely pleased to see her. "How did you find me?" "Small town, one hotel," Emily shrugged, entering and placing the bag on the desk. "Plus, I might have heard Aunt Rebecca freaking out about how you'd embarrassed her by getting a hotel room like we're strangers or something. I figured this was where you'd be." She unpacked the bag, revealing a bottle of wine, 2 plastic cups, and a container of chocolate chip cookies. "I stole these from the party. They're actually really good." "Thanks for coming," I said, genuinely touched. "But won't you be missed?" Emily snorted, pouring wine into the cups. "Please. They're all too busy damage controlling your exit. Uncle Thomas is apologizing to everyone, Aunt Rebecca is playing the victim, and Haley is soaking up the sympathy for having her special day ruined. It's quite the performance." She handed me a cup, then raised her own. To finally saying what needs to be said. We clinked plastic cups and sat at the small table by the window. "You know," Emily said after a moment, "you're not the only one who sees the dynamic in your family. A lot of us do." "Really?" I asked, surprised. "No one's ever said anything. Because it's not our place. And because your mom is scary when challenged." Emily broke a cookie in half. "But my mom and I have talked about it for years, how differently they treat you and Haley. It's always been obvious and always been wrong. I thought I was overreacting," I admitted. "They've always made me feel like I'm too sensitive, too demanding, too much." "Classic gaslighting," Emily nodded. "My therapist would have a field day with your parents." We shared a small smile. "Can I tell you something surprising?" Emily continued. "Haley showed up at my hotel room last night, freaking out about the engagement." "What? Why?" "Apparently she's not as confident about this whole thing as she seems. She was asking me if I thought she was rushing into marriage, if she was ready for this commitment. She mentioned you several times." "Me?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "Why would she bring me up?" Emily swirled her wine thoughtfully. "She said something like, Sam always knows exactly what she wants and goes after it. I've never been sure about anything. I think she envies your certainty, your independence." I shook my head, struggling to reconcile this with the sister who had always seemed so secure in her favored position. That doesn't make sense. Haley's always had everything handed to her. "And maybe that's the problem," Emily suggested. "She's never had to figure things out for herself. She's always had your parents directing her life, solving her problems, making her decisions easier. You had to become self-sufficient because they weren't there for you the same way. It made you stronger." I considered this perspective, so at odds with how I'd always seen our family dynamic. "So you're saying she's jealous of me?" "I'm saying it's complicated. The golden child role comes with its own burdens. Not that it excuses how she treats you," Emily added quickly. "But it might explain some things." We talked for hours, Emily sharing observations about my family from an outsider's perspective that helped me see patterns I'd been too close to recognize. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text. I expected Megan checking in, but instead saw Haley's name on the screen. Can we talk? Coffee tomorrow? Just us. I showed Emily the message. Are you going to go? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to just drive back to Chicago at dawn and forget this whole weekend. That would be understandable, Emily nodded. But maybe this is a chance to have a real conversation with your sister for once. Without your parents mediating. After Emily left, I lay awake considering my options. The wounded part of me wanted to ignore Haley's message, to protect myself from further hurt. But another part, the part that had always hoped for genuine connection with my only sibling, was curious. After an hour of tossing and turning, I texted back, rustic bean, 10 a.m. I slept fitfully, waking to pale spring sunlight filtering through thin curtains. After a quick shower and change into the spare clothes from my car, I drove to the Rustic Bean, Lakeside's attempt at a hip coffee shop where I'd worked one summer during college. Haley was already there when I arrived, seated at a corner table with 2 large mugs. Her engagement ring caught the light as she fidgeted with a sugar packet. She looked up as I approached, her expression uncharacteristically uncertain. I got you a vanilla latte, she said as I sat down. You still like those, right? I do, I replied, surprised she remembered. Thanks. An awkward silence stretched between us. 5 years of minimal contact and a lifetime of competition had left us without the tools for genuine conversation. I'm sorry about yesterday, Haley finally said, staring into her coffee. Not about what I said, I meant most of that. But I'm sorry about how everything happened. Mom should have told you about the engagement party. Yes, she should have, I agreed, not willing to make this easy for her. Haley looked up, a flash of the old defiance in her eyes. You didn't have to make a scene though. Actually, I think I did, I countered. 27 years of being treated as less than deserved at least one scene, don't you think? She flinched slightly. Is that really how you see it? That you were treated as less than? How else would you describe it, Haley? The forgotten birthdays, the missed events, the constant comparison where I always came up short. The way they financially supported your every whim while expecting me to stand completely on my own? The way they celebrate your every achievement while treating mine as expected and unremarkable? Haley was quiet for a long moment. I never saw it that way, she finally said. I always thought you were the one they really admired. You were so smart, so focused. You always knew what you wanted. Mom was always telling me, why can't you apply yourself like Samantha? Samantha never needed help with her homework. Samantha got a scholarship. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. Are you serious? Mom said those things to you? Haley nodded, tearing the sugar packet she'd been holding into tiny pieces. All the time. You were the standard I could never live up to. You think they supported me financially because they favored me? They did it because they thought I couldn't manage on my own, not like perfect, independent Samantha. That's not at all how I experienced our childhood, I said slowly. I know that now, Haley replied. Emily helped me see it last night, after you left. She said we'd been pitted against each other our whole lives by Mom's weird competitive parenting. We sat in silence, each processing this revelation. Do you actually want to get married? I asked abruptly. Haley's eyes widened. What? Emily mentioned you were having doubts. I'm wondering if you actually want this, or if it's what Mom and Dad want for you. Haley's gaze dropped to her engagement ring. I love Jason. I do. It's just, everything's happening so fast. He proposed, and suddenly Mom was planning this huge engagement party and talking about December wedding dates, and I don't know if I'm ready. Have you told them that? She laughed humorlessly. How could I? They're so excited. Mom's already looking at venues. Dad tears up every time he talks about walking me down the aisle. How can I disappoint them? So you'll potentially enter a marriage you're not ready for to avoid disappointing our parents? I asked, gentler than the words themselves. Haley's eyes filled with tears. When you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous. It's not ridiculous. It's exactly how they trained you to behave. Your worth in their eyes has always been tied to meeting their expectations. And yours has been tied to not needing them at all, Haley observed. We're both pretty messed up, huh? Despite everything, I found myself smiling. Seems like it. I don't want to compete with you anymore, Sam, Haley said suddenly. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of feeling like one of us has to lose for the other to win. Me too, I admitted. But I don't know if that's possible as long as Mom and Dad are in the middle, playing us against each other. Haley nodded slowly. So maybe they don't need to be in the middle anymore. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. Beyond the resentment and competition, I could see someone struggling with her own insecurities, her own search for identity and approval. Someone not so different from me. Maybe they don't, I agreed. Maybe we can have a relationship that isn't filtered through them. I'd like that, Haley said, her voice small but sincere. I've missed having a big sister. Those simple words cut through years of hurt more effectively than any apology could have. We weren't fixed, not by a long shot, but for the first time, I could see a path forward that didn't require severing ties with my entire family. So what do we do now? Haley asked. I think we need to talk to Mom and Dad, I said. Together. The drive back to my parents' house felt different with Haley in the passenger seat. We didn't speak much, each lost in our own thoughts, but the silence wasn't hostile. It felt like a temporary truce, fragile but genuine. Mom answered the door, her surprise evident at seeing us together. Her hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, her casual sweater set deliberately chosen to convey ease she didn't feel. Girls, she said, her tone carefully neutral. This is unexpected. We need to talk, I replied. All of us. Mom's eyes darted between us, clearly trying to assess the situation. Your father's in his study. Come in. The house looked different in the morning light, smaller somehow, the decorations from yesterday's party removed as if they'd never existed. I noticed, not for the first time, how many photos of Haley adorned the walls and shelves, how few included me. Dad emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose, his expression wary. Sam. Haley. Everything okay? Let's sit down, I suggested, gesturing toward the living room. We arranged ourselves awkwardly, Mom and Dad on the sofa, Haley and I in adjacent armchairs. The four of us hadn't sat down for a serious conversation in years, maybe ever. First, I began, I want to apologize for disrupting the party yesterday. Regardless of how I felt, there were better ways to handle it. Mom relaxed visibly, clearly expecting this to be a standard Samantha apologizes and we move on conversation. Well, that's very mature of you, dear. These things happen in families. I'm not finished, I interrupted gently but firmly. I'm sorry for how I handled things, but not for what I said. The issues I raised are real, and they need to be addressed if we're going to have any kind of healthy relationship moving forward. Mom's posture stiffened again. Samantha, I think you're blowing things out of proportion. Every family has its dynamics. Stop, Mom, Haley interjected, surprising everyone. Sam's right. We need to talk about this. Mom looked betrayed. Haley, you too? After how she ruined your engagement party? She didn't ruin anything, Haley said quietly. You did, when you invited her home for a celebration and then pretended you hadn't when it became inconvenient. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Now, girls, I'm sure your mother didn't intentionally. Thomas, please stop defending me for 1 minute, Mom snapped, then immediately composed herself. This is exactly what I mean. Everyone's overreacting. I simply got confused about the dates. It was an honest mistake. was it? I asked, reaching into my purse to pull out my phone. Because I recorded our conversation. This was a bluff, I hadn't recorded anything, but the panic that flashed across Mom's face told me everything I needed to know. You what? She gasped. I'm kidding, Mom. I didn't record anything. But your reaction just confirmed that you remember exactly what you said to me. You invited me home knowing full well that this was Haley's weekend, and then you pretended to forget. Mom's face flushed. I don't have to sit here and be accused. Rebecca, Dad interrupted, his voice uncharacteristically firm. Stop. All three of us turned to him in surprise. Sam's right, he continued, removing his glasses and rubbing his eyes. You did call her. You did tell me you'd invited her for this weekend. And when I asked about the conflict with Haley's party, you said, and I quote, she probably won't come anyway, and if she does, she'll understand that Haley's engagement takes precedence. The room went silent. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and hurt. It was somehow worse knowing that the dismissal had been deliberate. Thomas. Mom's voice was shocked. How dare you? No, Rebecca. I've enabled this for too long. Dad turned to me, his eyes tired but clear. Your mother has always favored Haley. I've always known it, and I've never done enough to fix it. I told myself it was just her way, that you were strong enough to handle it, that keeping the peace was more important. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I hadn't expected this. In all my imagined confrontations with my parents, Dad had remained the passive peacekeeper. Hearing him acknowledge his role felt like the ground shifting beneath me. You've always been the easy one, Haley, Dad continued, turning to my sister. You've stayed close, depended on us, made choices we understood. Sam challenged us, pushed boundaries, needed things we didn't know how to give. It was easier to focus on you, to celebrate the child who fit our expectations rather than adapt to the one who didn't. Tears filled Haley's eyes. So you're saying you only favored me because I was weak and compliant? No, honey, that's not, Mom began. Not weak, Dad corrected. But your needs aligned with what we knew how to give. Sam needed something different, independence, respect for her choices, celebration of achievements that were outside our comfort zone. We failed her. Mom stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. I refuse to sit here and be painted as some kind of monster. I have always loved both my daughters equally. Love isn't the issue, Mom, I said. I know you love me. But you've never respected me or my choices the way you respect Haley's. You've never celebrated my achievements the way you celebrate hers. That's not true. I brag about you to my friends all the time. Do you? What was my recent promotion to? Mom hesitated. Your digital marketing thing. Senior communication strategist, I supplied. A position that typically requires 10 years of experience, which I achieved in 5. It came with a 30% raise and a team of 6 people reporting to me. Did you know any of that? Her silence was answer enough. What about me? Haley asked quietly. Do you even know what I want? Have you ever asked me, or do you just assume? Mom looked genuinely confused. Of course I know what you want, sweetheart. You've always wanted what we want for you. No, Mom. I've always wanted what you want for me because I didn't know how to want anything else. I've spent my entire life trying to please you and Dad because that's the only way I knew to be loved in this family. Mom sank back onto the sofa, looking suddenly older, smaller. I don't understand what's happening. Where is this coming from? It's been building for years, I explained. The difference is that Haley and I are finally talking to each other instead of competing. We're seeing how your parenting has hurt both of us, in different ways. Hurt you? Mom's voice wavered. Everything I've done has been for you girls. Everything. I believe that, I said gently. But good intentions don't erase the impact of your actions. Dad reached for Mom's hand. Rebecca, we need to listen. Really listen. For the next hour, Haley and I took turns explaining how we had experienced our childhood and young adulthood, the competition, the different expectations, the ways we had each been shaped by our parents' treatment. Mom alternated between defensive anger and tearful denial. Dad listened quietly, occasionally nodding in recognition. "So what now?" Mom finally asked, her voice small. "Are you saying you don't want to be part of this family anymore, Samantha?" "No," I replied carefully. "I'm saying I want to be part of a healthier version of this family. One where my achievements are acknowledged and celebrated. One where Haley gets to make her own choices without fear of disappointing you. One where we relate to each other as the adults we are, not the children you still see us as." "And how exactly do we do that?" Mom asked, a hint of her usual sharpness returning. "It starts with respect," I said. "Respecting my boundaries, my choices, my independence. Not treating every visit home like an inconvenience or evidence that I've failed to meet your expectations. And for me," Haley added, "it means supporting my decisions even when they're not what you would choose. Like if Jason and I decide to postpone the wedding, or if I want to go back to school, or move away from Lakeside." Mom looked stricken. "Are you postponing the wedding?" "I don't know yet," Haley replied honestly. "But the point is, it needs to be my decision, ours, mine and Jason's, not yours. We need time," I concluded. "All of us. This isn't going to change overnight. But I'm willing to try if you are." Mom sat in silence for a long moment, then nodded almost imperceptibly. "I don't agree with everything you've said. But I hear you." It wasn't an apology, but from my mother, it was significant. "I'm going to head back to Chicago," I said, standing. "I have a lot to process." "I'll help you get your things," Haley offered. We climbed the stairs to the makeshift gym that had once been my bedroom. I gathered the few items I'd brought, then turned to the boxes stacked in the corner. "I'd like to take some of these," I told Haley. "My high school stuff, the debate trophies, my old journals. Things that matter to me." "Of course," she agreed. "It's your stuff." Together, we carried 2 boxes down to my car. Mom and Dad stood in the doorway, watching in silence. "I'll call you," I promised Haley, hugging her awkwardly over the box in her arms. "I'll answer," she replied with a small smile. I approached my parents, unsure of the appropriate goodbye after everything that had been said. "Drive safely," Dad said, pulling me into a brief hug. "And I am proud of you, Sam." I should have said it more. Mom hesitated, then stepped forward. "I made mistakes," she said stiffly. "But I've only ever wanted what's best for you. Both of you." "I know, Mom," I replied, accepting her tentative embrace. "We'll talk soon." As I drove away from my childhood home, I felt lighter than I had in years. Nothing was resolved, not really. The patterns of a lifetime wouldn't change with one conversation. But for the first time, I had spoken my truth and been heard. For the first time, Haley and I had allied instead of competed. For the first time, I had set boundaries not out of anger but out of self-respect. The 3 hours back to Chicago gave me time to process. I called Emily to thank her for her role in facilitating the conversation with Haley. I texted Megan to let her know I was on my way home. I thought about how to integrate this new understanding of my family into my sense of self. By the time I crossed the Chicago city limits, I felt like I was returning not just to my apartment but to myself, a self that was finally beginning to feel whole. 3 months passed, bringing summer to Chicago. My apartment, always my sanctuary, had evolved with me. I'd hung my debate trophies on a small shelf in the living room, not out of vanity, but as a reminder of who I'd always been. My high school journals occupied a special place on my bookshelf. Small changes, but significant ones. Physical representations of reclaiming my past as part of my present. "So he actually said it again?" Megan asked, handing me a glass of wine as we prepared for my birthday dinner, my actual birthday this time, July 15th. "3rd time this month," I confirmed. An unprompted "I'm proud of you, Sam" at the end of our call yesterday. From your father? Mr. Conflict Avoidance himself? Megan shook her head in wonder. Therapy is magical. I laughed, arranging candles on the dining table. It is pretty miraculous. 6 sessions and he's already a different person. Mom's still resistant, but even she's making an effort. After our confrontation in April, my father had surprised everyone by finding a therapist specializing in family dynamics. He'd started with individual sessions, then cautiously suggested family therapy. Mom had initially refused but eventually agreed to 1 session to keep the peace. 1 had become 2, then monthly appointments with varying configurations of family members. The changes were small but noticeable. Dad called regularly, asking thoughtful questions about my work and life. Mom still struggled with old patterns but was making efforts, sending articles related to digital marketing, asking about my friends by name, catching herself mid-comparison between Haley and me. Most surprising was my evolving relationship with Haley. Weekly video calls had gradually transformed from awkward to genuinely enjoyable. Without our parents mediating, we were discovering common ground and developing something that felt remarkably like friendship. And Haley's still postponing the wedding? Karen asked, emerging from the kitchen with a platter of appetizers. Indefinitely, I confirmed. She and Jason are still together, but she realized she was rushing into marriage to please Mom and Dad. They're taking things slower now, getting to know each other without the pressure of wedding planning. Your sister growing a backbone, Megan mused. Another miracle. Be nice, I chided gently. She's always had a backbone. She just needed permission to use it. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of more friends. Soon my apartment was filled with people I loved, my chosen family in Chicago, the support system I'd built over 5 years of independence. Ben from work with his boyfriend Miguel, Zoe from my building, David and Teresa from my book club, and others who had become essential parts of my life. As we gathered around the table laden with food and wine, I felt a surge of gratitude. These people knew me, valued me, celebrated me without condition or comparison. My phone buzzed with a text from Haley. Happy birthday, sis. Your gift should arrive tomorrow. Hope tonight is amazing. Followed immediately by one from Dad, happy birthday, Sam. Your mother and I are so proud of the woman you've become. Love you. And finally, from Mom, happy birthday, Samantha. I hope your day is special. I've been thinking about what you said about celebrating your achievements. Your promotion was truly impressive. I'm trying to do better. Not perfect, but progress. My therapy sessions had helped me understand that my parents weren't monsters, they were flawed humans carrying their own wounds. Mom's perfectionism and favoritism stemmed from her own childhood with critical parents who had never acknowledged her efforts. Dad's conflict avoidance was rooted in growing up with parents whose bitter arguments had ended in divorce. Understanding didn't excuse their behavior, but it helped me see them with compassion rather than just hurt. Speech. Ben called out, raising his glass. Birthday girl speech. I stood, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with wine. Thank you all for being here. A year ago, I would have downplayed my birthday, convinced somewhere deep down that I wasn't worth celebrating. But standing here with all of you, I finally understand what real celebration feels like, being seen and valued for exactly who you are. I raised my glass. To growth, to boundaries, to chosen family, and to finally celebrating myself. Cheers erupted around the table, followed by animated conversation and laughter. As I looked at these people who loved me without condition, I realized that the celebration I'd sought from my parents had always been available, just not from the source I'd expected. The following weekend, I took a significant step. I declined Sunday dinner at my parents' house without offering an excuse. Instead of the guilt trip I'd expected, Mom had simply said, maybe next time, then. A small victory, but meaningful. Haley had begun taking classes toward finishing her business degree, a dream she'd abandoned years ago at our mother's subtle discouragement. She called me regularly for advice on assignments, scheduling, balancing priorities, all things I'd figured out on my own years earlier. For the first time, I felt like a big sister in the true sense of the word. Dad continued therapy, sometimes sharing insights that revealed how much he was changing. I realized I've spent my whole life afraid of conflict, he told me during one call. But avoiding conflict doesn't avoid pain, it just shifts it from me to the people I care about. I don't want to do that anymore. Mom's journey was slower, more resistant. Her patterns were deeply ingrained, and her defensive reactions still surfaced regularly. But even she was making efforts, sending an email when my team won a major client account, asking Haley what she wanted for her birthday instead of assuming, catching herself mid-comparison and stopping. The upcoming holidays would be the real test. We had agreed to gather at my parents' house for Thanksgiving, all of us, including Jason, for the first time since the confrontation. I had already decided that I would stay at a hotel rather than in my old room/gym, a boundary I was determined to maintain. My therapist, Dr. Lin, had helped me craft a letter to myself during one of our sessions, a letter I kept on my nightstand and read whenever old doubts surfaced. Dear Samantha, your worth is not determined by your parents' ability to see it. Your achievements are valid whether they are celebrated or not. Your boundaries are necessary, not selfish. Your feelings are legitimate, not an overreaction. You are enough, not because of what you accomplish or how well you perform, but simply because you exist. You deserve to take up space in your family and in the world. You deserve to be seen, heard, and celebrated. With love and compassion. Yourself. Reading those words still brought tears to my eyes sometimes, but they were healing tears. The wounded child within me was finally being heard and validated, not by my parents, but by the adult I had become. As summer deepened into early fall, I found myself looking ahead with something that felt suspiciously like hope. Not hope that my family would magically transform into the one I'd always wanted, but hope that we could build something new, something imperfect but honest, something that allowed all of us to be who we truly were rather than who we thought we should be. The night of my birthday celebration, after all my friends had gone home and I sat alone in my apartment surrounded by evidence of love and connection, my phone rang. It was Grandma Ruth. Just wanted to wish my granddaughter a happy birthday, she said, her voice warm across the miles. I hear things are changing in the Mitchell family. Slowly, I confirmed. But yes, they are. Good, she said simply. It's about time. After a pause, she added, you know, the best gift you gave that family wasn't standing up for yourself, though that was long overdue. The best gift was showing them a different way to be together. That's going to help all of you, even your mother, though she may be the last to recognize it. I hope so, I said. I know so, Grandma replied with the certainty of her 87 years. The truth is always better than comfortable lies, Samantha. Always. Even when it hurts at first. As I went to bed that night, I thought about how far I'd come from that April afternoon when I'd discovered the forgotten birthday cake in my parents' refrigerator. The journey hadn't been easy, and it was far from over. There would be backsliding and difficult conversations ahead, old patterns reasserting themselves, new boundaries to establish. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't navigating that journey alone. I had Haley beside me instead of across from me. I had friends who knew my whole story and loved me through it. I had professional support in Dr. Lin. And most importantly, I had myself, the self I had always been but had never fully embraced or celebrated. The celebration I really needed wasn't about my birthday at all, it was about finally celebrating myself. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't see your worth? How did you handle it? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be celebrated too. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most important celebration is the one you give yourself.